I'm so happy that you can join us today for part 2 of the Shalom Bayit series on meddling parents and outside interferences. Before I begin part 2 of the series, I just want to update you on a couple of things. I've been getting some emails because I accidentally, the other day when I gave a shiur and I posted it online, and I was asking everybody out there at Torah Anytime who tunes in and all the ladies that come to the shiurim for help with our renovations. I forgot to give information on how to donate. Now, before I give you that information, for those of you who are just tuning in and don't know what I'm talking about, we were speaking the other day about the fact that the Gemara says, "Hasharui belo isha, sharui belo choma," that a man who doesn't have a wife, or deeper yet, a man who has a wife, but that wife isn't living to the expectations or the standards of what an isha Yehudiya is, sharui belo choma. It's like the house is no longer protected because a woman is like the choma. A woman is like the fortress, the walls of a house that provide security and protection. And we were talking about all the tragedies of our communities that have hit us in the last few years, and how the Skalender Rebbe was saying that it's very much due to the breach of tzniut of a woman. And therefore I was explaining that I would like to fix that breach in the Choma, and I would like to break some of the walls down in this little apartment that we rent every month in order to make more space for more amazing women who want to attend but there's no room, in order to build fortresses of ruchaniyut and yahadut. And just yesterday it hit me that the pasuk says in the Navi, Al chomotayich Yerushalayim hifkadati shomrim kol hayom vekol halayla. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us a promise that the walls of Yerushalayim hifkadati shomrim kol hayom vekol halayla, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu guards the walls of Yerushalayim, the fortress called Yerushalayim. How significant is that, ladies? If the women of Klal Yisrael are like the chomot, are like the walls, the fortresses of our homes, HaKadosh Baruch Hu guarantees, Al chomotayich Yerushalayim, on those walls of protection, those women who guard their homes, hifkadati shomrim kol hayom vekol halayla. I will see to it that I place guards around their homes and around their cities and communities, kol hayom vekol halayla, in order to protect them day and night. So ladies, I'm beseeching you again, and I'm going to be speaking about it several times, only because not all of you tune in to every single shiur, so please don't get frustrated if you hear the appeal again and again. I would like to knock down the temporary walls, the kirot, of this unit, and I would like to create a ohel for women and young girls that can congregate here and come more often, and we can gather more often and make it a larger space for more women who could attend. As I was saying, we need one of two things. We either need 100 ladies that donate $35 each, which is not a lot of money if you think about it, in total, in order to finish the renovations, or 35 women who give $100. If we get 35 ladies who give $100, we'll be finished a lot quicker. If we have the 100 ladies that give $35, which I would love also, because it gives more ladies the chance to have the zechut to donate and to be part of this tremendous endeavor that we would like to achieve. So the information, if you would like to donate, is as follows, and I want to thank you in advance, and thank those who anyway participated up until now and called our offices to make a donation. Ashrechem, thank you so much. Thank you. And I would again just like to say that when you help others, HaKadosh Baruch Hu helps you. Every woman who congregates in this edifice and takes something upon herself and inspires her home, that is in your merit, and your chomot are going to be secure. Amen. So the information is as follows. You could do one of a few things. You could either call our Ohel Sarah office at 347-430-5700. That number again is 347-430-5700, and make a donation over the phone. You could log on to www.ohelsarah.com, Sarah's without an H, and click on the donate button, on the PayPal donate button, and donate. And let us know when you do donate that you're donating for the renovation, so that we know to allocate the funds for that cause. And that's pretty much it. Those are one of the two options that you have. I want to thank you so much for listening. Let's begin. The last time we spoke about a pasuk in Sefer Bereshit that provides us with Shalom Bayit advice. It says, Al ken ya'azov ish et aviv ve'et imo ve'davak be'ishto. Tip number one that we spoke about was the idea of letting go of our financial dependency and not involving our parents in our life. And the financial dependency that we have to let go of is the dependency that we have on our parents. We also mentioned the fact that parents are not obligated to support us from the age of 6. And if they do, it's considered a din tzedakah, a very charitable act on their part. We also learned that we have to have the attitude that anything we receive from our parents is a bonus, and it should be appreciated, admired, and looked up to. We discussed the enormous expense that it requires for parents to raise their children, and how children have to have a sense of appreciation, of hakarat hatov for their parents, and not feel that everything is coming to them. So we're going to move on with the point of the enormous expense on the part of the parents even after you get married. So I'm going to begin with the following question. Do you know how much money an average Shabbat costs for a couple with 2 kids? I'm going to tell you. And again, it's minimum. The minimum is $300. That's the minimum. That means in a month, a couple could spend more than $1,000 on groceries just for Shabbat. Well, let me give you a scenario that took place. One Thursday afternoon, our Shimon realized that he didn't have an extra $300 to make Shabbat. What did he do? He involved his in-laws in his life, which is a no-no. How did he involve his in-laws? I'll tell you. He turned to his wife Miriam and he said, Miriam, do your parents really like you? Do they really like me? Because it seems like they invite your siblings for Shabbat more often than they invite us. So if they invite them more often, must mean they don't like us so much. Poor Miriam. And Miriam says, but Shimon, my parents have other kids that are living in the house. And he says, excuse me, slicha, so what? Why don't they invite us often, but they invite your other siblings? What excuse do they have? And she says, yeah, but Shimon, we have a lot of children. It gets very expensive. And Shimon says, forget about that. Please call your parents right now and ask them if we could come over for Shabbat. Poor Miriam feels obligated to her husband. So she picks up the phone half-heartedly and she calls her mother. Ima, Shalom, how are you? Shalom, I'm good. No, what can I do for you? Ima, I was just wondering, who's by you for Shabbat? And the mother says, who's by me for Shabbat? Your older brother and your younger brother. And Miriam asks, Ima, do you think we could also come for Shabbat? And the mother says, no, motek, no, honey. You can't notify me this late. It's Thursday afternoon. Maybe in the next month or two, it's going to be a possibility. And Miriam is trying to plead. She says, but Ima. And the mother says, Miriam, I'm really sorry. I'm busy with 1,000,001 things. I'm getting the whole house ready. We'll talk another time. Bye, motek. And she hangs up. Poor Miriam doesn't have to say a word to Shimon, because he could already tell by the look on her face that the answer was no. And then Shimon begins his tirade. I can't believe they said no. What kind of parents do you have? They never liked me in the first place, and maybe they don't even like you. Oh. What prompted Shimon to begin this entire argument? You know what happened to him? What prompted him to start this whole thing? The fact that he didn't have an extra $300 to make his own Shabbat. You see how he involved the parents in his own life problems? Chevre, al ze ya'azov ish et aviv ve'et imo. I don't care what you have to do to make your own Shabbat. Go out and work a couple of extra hours that week. Borrow some money from a friend. Borrow from a gemach if you have to. But you don't get the parents and in-laws involved to the extent that it causes Shalom Bayit issues in your home. You don't have enough money? Do what the Gemara says. I spoke about this the previous time. Pshot nevela bashuk ve'al titztarech laberiot. Go out there and make your own living so that you don't have to be dependent on anybody. You have to put an end regarding involving your parents in your married life and all the problems of your marriage. From this day on, your mindset should be, whether they invited you or not, whether they gave you financial assistance or not, if they do, it's a bonus that has to be appreciated. And if they don't, that's also okay. And this is for the men out there who are listening. You have to know that anything your in-laws provide for you after the marriage and even before, that's a bonus. It's not coming to you, because your in-laws and your parents aren't obligated to provide you after a certain age. So anything they give you past the age of 6, that's a chesed, that's a bonus. Take the following scenario, for example, and it's to the guys out there. Imagine you and your wife Miriam were invited to eat supper by her parents. After the meal, your father-in-law calls you aside, sticks his hand in his pocket, and takes out a wad of cash. You take one look at that stack of hundreds and your heart begins to do the salsa. Woo-hoo, ba-ba. Ba, ba, da, 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 right? Your heart is beating away. And then your father hands you a $50 bill and says, Shimon, here's a little something for you. Pats you on the back and says, use it well. And he walks away. What would you think at that very moment? You'd want to throw that $50 bill back in his face from the insult and the frustration. Well, why were you so upset? Why are you so upset? Why? You know why? Because you were thinking, what is this? He called me over to the side as if who knows what. He shows me a wad of cash, so I thought, what does that mean you thought? The man gave you $50, but deep down you're thinking, what's $50? $50 is nothing. That's what you're thinking. But I have a question to all you Shimons out there. Imagine the following scenario now. You're invited to your in-laws for supper, and you tell your wife Miriam that you're going to meet her there after work. On the way to your in-laws' house, as you're walking down the street, you notice a $50 bill on the floor. Right? You're going to pick up that $50 bill? Right? Not only are you going to run to pick it up, you're going to sit on it so nobody else should claim the $50 before you do. Nachon, you're going to sit on it? And then after 15 minutes of sitting on it to make sure that nobody saw, you take the $50 bill in your hand and you start to dance. Da-da-dee, da-da-da, da-da-dee-da-da-da-da-da. Oh, da-da-dee-da. Wow, you're so excited. And the rest of the way to your in-laws' house, what do? You walk with your head to the floor just in case you might find some other treasures along the way. Me or there, who knows, maybe. Nachon? Why are you so happy about that $50 bill that you found? You know why? Because you unexpectedly found some extra cash on the floor. And because of that, notice what kind of good mood that put you in. All the Shimons out there, you should know that when your father-in-law gives you a $50 bill, $50, it's like you just found $50 on the street. That's the attitude that you have to have. If you receive the bonus, you're supposed to be happy and dance from joy. But why is it that when your father-in-law gives you a little cash, you get all upset and decide he's stingy? Because you thought you'd get a few $100s in your hand, and instead you received what you decided is a measly $50. So instead of rejoicing over the $50 that you received unexpectedly from your father-in-law, you became disappointed and frustrated. Well, that's the wrong attitude to have. Remember what David HaMelech alav Shalom wrote in Sefer Tehillim. Al tiftechu v'ndivim beven adam she'en lo teshua. Do not trust in princes, in the son of men, who has no salvation. One day he's here, one day he's gone. Therefore you can't rely on men. You should rely only on the Ribono Shel Olam. Therefore, al zeh ya'azov, one of the first things you have to do is let go of the financial dependency that you have on your parents and in-laws and fend for yourself. That's tip number 1. Tip number 2, concerning the pasuk al zeh ya'azov, involves visits. If you notice in the word bikur, which means visit, we find another word. You know which word? The word bikoret. Bikoret means criticism. When you visit your family members, it might lead to some form of criticism. Oftentimes we find that after every visit, somehow, some way, there's always some criticism we receive from either side. Whichever one of you thinks that when you go to visit your parents or in-laws, there's no criticism that's mentioned after you leave, you should know you're a little bit naive. So I'm going to give you just one example of what an innocent visit from parents can turn into. One afternoon at about 4 p.m., Miriam's mother-in-law calls to inform her that she and her husband are in the neighborhood, they're shopping, and they want to pop in for a short visit at 5 p.m. to see her, Shimon, and the kids. Now, at this stage of the marriage, Miriam and Shimon already have 3 little ones in the house. One was still nursing, he's a baby. One was running around in his diapers, and the 5-year-old was climbing the dresser looking for adventure. Okay? What could she do? If Miriam's mother-in-law wants to come visit during the busiest and most stressful time of the day, what could she do? Poor Miriam wasn't going to say, no, you can't come. But what's she going to do? The house was upside down. Dishes were in the sink. Legos were all over the floor. The kids were a mess. She was out of coffee, sugar, and milk. And she was already exhausted from the entire day. The last thing Miriam wanted at this point was a visit from her in-laws. What was she going to do about the fact that her in-laws were coming in 1 hour? Miriam makes a dash to the phone and calls her husband. Shimon, we have a problem. Ken, what's the problem? Your parents are coming to visit at 5 p.m. He says, Bashilach, why is that a problem? It's not a problem. Why is that a problem? She says, never mind that now. There's no food in the house, Shimon. Please stop off at the grocery store and bring home some milk, sugar, coffee, cake, soda, anything else you could think of, walnuts, all kinds of snacks. And Shimon, what does he do? He runs to the market because his parents are coming over for a visit. Notice how he runs to the market when his parents are coming over. If it were any other day, and Miriam would ask him to pick up some items in the store, what would you guys say? What would Shimon say? Are you sure we need all those things? Can we get along until next week when we do our weekly shopping? But for his parents, Kodesh Kodashim, he'll run to the store. And now it's now 4:10 p.m. and the in-laws are arriving in 50 minutes, in 50 minutes. What are we going to do? Have any of you ever seen Tchiyat HaMetim? All of a sudden, Miriam jumps up and like a heavy-duty vacuum cleaner, she goes from room to room, and in minutes, she manages to clear the floor, sweep the floor. She washes the dishes in the sink, puts the kids in pajamas and in their respective places, changes her clothes, puts on a little bit of makeup, and now the house was as spotless as she could get it to be during such a short amount of time. A big yishar koach for Miriam, a big yishar koach. And then at 4:45, Shimon arrives with all the groceries. Shimon walks in. He can't believe his eyes. Wow! Look at how clean the house looks, Miriam. I have to tell my mother to come every day. And poor Miriam says, Shimon, this isn't the time to make fun of me, okay? You don't know what I went through to get this house clean in the last 45 minutes. I'm exhausted. The kids were giving me a hard time. This is not the time to make fun of me. Be'emet shelo. Ladies, I have to tell you, if your in-laws were not coming, it would take you forever to clean that house. I don't know why some women keep their houses untidy, but somehow the word mother-in-law gives you some superhuman strength and you manage to do the impossible. Anyhow, Miriam and Shimon quickly put the groceries away. They put some cake and other goodies on the table. And with 5 minutes to spare, Shimon tidies himself up, and now he and Miriam are ready to greet his parents. At 5:00 on the dot, there's a knock at the door. Shimon runs to the door, and as he lets his parents in, his mother kisses him on the right cheek, and she's thinking, oh, the bookshelf is dusty. Doesn't she have a dust, this girl? Then she kisses him on the left cheek. And the shades are dirty. Doesn't she believe in washing the shades, this girl? Whoever thinks that a mother-in-law closes her eyes in those few seconds when she first enters the house is sorely mistaken. The mother-in-law has special scanners in that brain of hers. In just a few seconds, she's able to scan everything in the house and keeps mental notes of everything she saw. Okay. Shimon's parents come in. His father sat on the recliner. His mother sat on the couch, and Shimon sat next to his mother. And then Miriam came out of the kitchen, hugged the mother-in-law. She says, Brucha ba'a, welcome, welcome, I'm so happy you're here. What can I offer you to drink, my dear in-laws? So the mother-in-law says, I want a tea, please. And the father-in-law says, and I'll take a coffee, please. So Miriam says, how much sugar do each of you take? So the mother-in-law says, I'll take, please, 2.5 teaspoons, and please, only a half a teaspoon for your father-in-law because he has to watch his sugar levels, and I don't want any unnecessary medical accidents here today, please. Miriam went into the kitchen, and because of the stress that she was feeling and the nerves, she forgot what they wanted, miskena. Who gets the tea and who gets the coffee? Poor Miriam went back out to the living room and very ashamedly, she asks, oh, I'm so sorry, but I forgot. Which one of you gets the tea and which one gets the coffee? So the mother-in-law says, I want the tea, he wants the coffee. So Miriam went back into the kitchen, but this time she forgot who gets the 2.5 teaspoons and who gets the half a teaspoon. But because she felt so embarrassed to go out again and ask that question, she should look like a fool, she decided to wing it. She winged it and she reversed the order. She put 2.5 teaspoons of sugar in her father-in-law's coffee, the diabetic, and she put a half a teaspoon in her mother-in-law's tea. In the meantime, while Miriam was preparing the drinks, her mother-in-law, who was sitting on the couch, started, to feel the couch, stroke the couch, and inadvertently, she stuck her hand between the 2 couch pillows. And what did she find? You all know what I'm talking about. An entire toy store was there. Miniature elephants and zebras and rhinoceroses, some pieces of Legos. And she's thinking to herself, didn't this girl ever do a Pesach cleaning? Mazeh? Did she believe in vacuum cleaners? But she kept quiet and she didn't say a word. All she did was gather information. Then Miriam brings out the drinks and gives her mother-in-law the tea. Ooh, ugh. Why is this tea bitter? And the poor father-in-law, they had to call Hatzal or the paramedics. They had to put him a special intravenous. What a disaster. Dov, the visit was over and the in-laws went home. Now maybe this example is far-fetched. Maybe not. You never know. But there's always going to be some form of criticism after a visit, because the next day, Shimon's mother calls him. Shalom, Bini Ayakar. Hello, my dear son. Ima, ma shlomech? How are you? Beseder, okay, I'm okay. Baruch Hashem. But, Shimon, I wanted to tell you something because I'm your mother. And I love you. And I have to tell you a few things. באמת, I hope Hashem forgives me. שהשם רק יסלח לי. Hashem won't forgive you, גברת. Don't you love it when the mother-in-laws want to talk Lashon Hara, but they involve HaKadosh Baruch Hu in their crime? Hashem רק יסלח לי. What, do you think that if you say Hashem should forgive me for what I'm about to say, that means you have carte blanche now to speak your mind? Aval Shimon, I have to tell you because I love you. And then she says, tell me, Tagidli, everything's okay with your wife? And Shimon says, yeah, lama, why? And the mother says, what, she can't remember from 1 minute to the next who wants coffee and who wants tea? And then she forgets about who gets the 2.5 teaspoons and who gets the half a teaspoon. She doesn't even bother to ask again. And she takes the risk that your father, who's a diabetic, is going to collapse. Tagidli, is that normally? That's normal? And Shimon says, Lo, Ima, you don't understand. She was so stressed out and so nervous from the visit that she got uptight. And she made a boo-boo. She made a mistake. And the mother says, nah, nothing doing. I'm telling you, yesh la baya, she has a problem, and you should pay close attention to it. Not only that, but I have to ask. Tell me, she doesn't believe in cleaning the blinds and dusting the shelves? And he says, what? What are you talking about? I don't know what you're saying. And she says, what? You didn't realize the blinds are dirty and the bookshelves are dusty? What, you grew up in my house. Don't you remember seeing your mother as a little boy, bending on her knees, using a toothbrush to clean the corners of the wall? You don't remember seeing that in your house? Plus, I bought you guys a vacuum cleaner for a Hanukkah gift. How come she never uses it? She should use it to vacuum the sofa, because you know what I found there between the pillows? I mean, I'm not judging because she has 3 little kids, but, Zabaya. She's listening to this. And in all honesty, he never paid attention to these things. He never realized. So he finishes the conversation with his mother, and they hang up. Now I have a question that I want you to think about. Was Shimon's mind somewhat poisoned by his mother against his wife? Absolutely. Mothers out there, you have to be aware that your son takes everything that you say to heart. Your words are like the words on the Luchot HaBrit. But let me tell you, where this meddling and this visit can lead to. That night, Shimon came home after work, and Miriam opened the door with a smile, the way a woman is supposed to greet her husband. But Shimon wasn't smiling anymore. So she noticed that something was wrong. She asked him, Shimon, everything's okay? Yeah, everything's fine, man. I just had a hard day. He came in, he sat down, and she served him soup. She served him the soup she prepared. He tasted the soup, and he says, Miriam, what's wrong with the soup? Tastes a little weird. I ask you all out there, why is there something wrong with the soup all of a sudden? Why? You know why? Because Shimon's mother spoke with him that afternoon and created negative vibes against his wife. To the men out there I say, when your mother fills your head with all kinds of negative reports and criticism against your wife, suddenly your wife's food no longer tastes as good as it did. It's the same soup your wife served you the day before when you claimed it was delicious. But today the soup tastes different because your mother spoke with you about your wife. And while Shimon is eating his soup, he looks around and he notices that his mother was right about the blinds and about the bookshelves. And he begins to comment when he never did before. So Miriam asks him, Shimon, what happened to you that you suddenly realized the blinds need cleaning and the bookshelves need dusting? Did you by any chance speak with your mother? And don't tell me no, because I can hear her words coming out of your throat. Miriam and Shimon began to argue until Shimon exploded, and he says, okay, I admit that my mother spoke to me, and you know what? She's right. The house is never clean, and you're always so forgetful. My father almost died because you don't pay attention to details. And then, of course, Miriam opened her mouth, miskena, and she says, I don't want to hear about your mother anymore. I feel like I'm living in the house with her all the time. This is my house. These are my kids. And if you don't like it, you don't like the way I run this house, you could go back to live with your mother. Lech le'imah shelcha. Ladies, a simple visit that was no more than 30 minutes long turned into a battle that lasted for 30 days. And why did this all take place? Because Shimon's mother couldn't keep her criticism to herself. A bikur can sometimes lead to bikorit. A visit can sometimes lead to criticism. So this I say to the mothers-in-law out there. As much as you want to, please don't express your criticism to your married children. Of course, some of you over here wish your mothers-in-law were sitting here tonight, but that's okay. You could download the shiur and send it to her anonymously, of course. But we're laughing. But before you know it, you're also going to become a mothers-in-law. You know, some of you sitting here, and those of you who are listening out there, you might be mothers-in-law, or you're going to become mothers-in-law one day. So you also have to be guided and instructed as to what's appropriate and correct behavior as a mother-in-law, or incorrect and inappropriate behavior. So notice how a simple and innocent visit can turn into a scandalous affair that all began with criticism, and that's after a 30-minute visit. Could you imagine what kind of criticism would surface after spending an entire Shabbat with your parents or in-laws? For a period of 26 hours, you're being scrutinized, watched, analyzed, and dissected. You think after you leave that Shabbat, after you left and you went home after Shabbat, you think there's no criticism? You think there's no pressure or stress? I want you to think about the following. A short 30-minute visit caused a criticism that incited a 30-day Shalom Bayit scandal. If that's the case, how many Shabbatot a year should you spend by your parents? I'm going to tell you. Many Rabbanim say it should be a maximum of 6 times a year. Now I know by the Ashkenazim that's crazy, but the Ashkenazim have it wrong, and I'm open enough and I'm saying it. I might get flack, but they have it all wrong. Those couples that get married and every single day they're by the parents or in-laws eating supper, and every Shabbat they alternate and they're by the parents or in-laws, it's a terrible mistake that they're making. So I'm going to clarify for you. It should be, by the way, in general, and then we'll discuss the newly married couples. Married couples with kids, it should be that every 6 to 7 weeks you take turns spending Shabbat at your parents' homes. What does that mean? That means that after 6 or 7 weeks of being home with your husband and children, you go to your parents' house for Shabbat. And then you spend another 7 weeks at home. And then after that, you go to your husband's parents for Shabbat. And let me tell you that for a young married couple, it isn't at all healthy, like we said before, to alternate every Shabbat. A newly married couple should spend at least 2 to 3 Shabbatot in their own home and 1 Shabbat at their parents' home. And not every time the same parents. Meaning, after 2-3 weeks of being home, you and your chatan, you and your husband, you don't go to your mother, and then after 2-3 weeks again to your mother, and then after 2-3 weeks again to your mother. No, you alternate. And if you have children, obviously, like we said, you have to spread out the Shabbatot even more, according to what I told you earlier, 6 to 7 weeks. That's when it concerns being hosted for Shabbat. What about Chagim? Let's take Pesach, for example. Where should a couple spend the Chag? You know, there was a husband who once spoke with a Rav about this inyan, and he told the rabbi very openly, he said, Rabbi, when you start talking about the Chagim, I feel stomach pangs. And the Rav says, why? And he says, because a month before the Chag, you don't know what kind of arguments there are in the house about where we should spend Pesach, by my parents or by her parents. And then once we make the decision, when the Chag finally rolls around on the calendar, one of us is always going without cheshek, without not being in such a good mood. So the entire Chag, deep down, one of us is down and out, isn't very happy. And then for a month after the Chag, there are arguments in the house about why we couldn't just enjoy the Chag, and why the sour face throughout the entire Chag. And this poor guy was telling the rabbi that for 2 months he suffers concerning the Chagim. To all you couples out there with kids, I ask, who says that you have to be hosted by anybody for the Chag? Efo katuv, where is it written? David HaMelech Alav Shalom wrote, Ashrei Yoshvei Beitecha. Fortunate are those who stay in your house. Od Yahalelucha Sela. They will continuously praise you forever. Maybe you should consider staying home instead of being hosted. What would be wrong with that? Many couples don't realize what an undertaking it is when you already have 3 or 4 or 5 kids to pack up and go away for the Chag. And some of you do realize it, but you do it anyway. But ultimately, deep down, you know there's no place like home. You know that. Ever thought about what you gain when you go away to your parents for the Chagim? What do you gain? If you think about it, even if you go away, let's say for Pesach, you're still obligated to clean the house for the Chag. This business where a couple And kids, they say, we're going to spend the whole Chag by our parents and we're just going to sell the house for the Chag. That's chinuch yeladim. This is how you teach your kids what Pesach is all about, so they don't see you cleaning, they don't see you organizing, they don't see the purchases for the Chag, they don't know what it means to have a Chag in their own house, just lock up and go. This is chinuch yeladim. This is how you teach the kids Torah. But anyway, let's say you're from those who are doing it right. And you decide you're going to your in-laws or your parents, but you're going to be home either to sleep or the second days. If you think about it, you're still obligated to clean the house for the Chag. The woman spends so much time cleaning, scraping, folding, laundering, organizing for Pesach. By the time Pesach rolls around, she's so exhausted and wiped out from all the preparations. The last thing you need is to spend the Chag by your mother-in-law. Now, while it's true that the first few minutes when you arrive at your parents, it's so wonderful and everybody's happy to see each other, neshikot v'chibukim. But what price are you going to pay for those few minutes of pleasure and enjoyment? Let me tell you what price a couple pays for being in their parents' house for the Chag. I'm not saying you should never go. I'm just saying you shouldn't go as often, or maybe you should just go for a meal, or maybe 2 meals. But anyway, first of all, the fact that you're exhausted affects your night and your mood. We're taking Pesach as an example. You forget that it's a pressure to be by the in-laws or parents, especially with kids, because you're always nervous that your children are going to do something that's going to reflect the lack of chinuch in your house. You always, don't do this, your kids, don't do this, don't do that, don't say this in front of Bobby, don't do... And what about the packing of 4 kids and 2 adults? How stressed do you feel when you have to pack them all up, then you have to repack when you have to take them home, and then you have to unpack again when you get home. Now again, like we said, those few minutes of pleasure when you meet everybody in your parents' house or your in-laws' house, you meet everybody for the Chag, it's a wonderful thing. You see your parents, you see your siblings, you see some of your sisters-in-laws and brothers-in-laws. It's very, very nice. But what happens after those few minutes? Watch what happens on the night of the Seder in your parents' house. Your parents hosted, let's say, 5 couples with all their kids. So that's a total of 10 adults, not including your parents, and an average of 22 children. Now, we all know that all it takes is one mischievous cousin to ruin the tone of the entire Seder, and then all the kids get upset and rowdy and anxious. All it takes is one rowdy cousin. And ladies, when a child is mischievous and rowdy, who does everybody look at? The father or the mother? It's the poor mother that gets all the dirty looks. The father doesn't even notice the balagan that the kid is making. He's sitting there with his wine and his pillow and the jalabiya like a Saudi Arabian sheikh. And you, miskena, you're the one who's holding one kid from one arm, one kid in the other arm, another kid is on your lap. Now embarrassing is it when your kid spills that first course on that crisp, clean, white tablecloth that belongs to your mother-in-law. All your sisters-in-law are looking at you. They're smiling. But deep down, you know what they're thinking. Ay, she is such a wild boy. Doesn't she believe in chinuch and discipline? Are we going to be subject to this the entire night? And then the night just began. You know they're thinking that. Then you have that one kid who likes to pinch and kick people under the table and disturbs the entire Seder, and your kid, that's your kid, and everybody's smiling. So cute, he's so cute, umotek. But in their minds they're thinking, what kind of chinuch is this child getting? And you know that they're thinking that. You're so embarrassed because you could feel that everybody's thinking things, but they're keeping quiet. And what about those cousins who decide that they want to make a choo-choo train, everybody choo-choo train, while everybody's in the middle of trying to recite the Haggadah? Right? And then there's always that one family member who urges you, begs you, yalla, yalla, no, finish the Haggadah already. I'm so hungry. No, what do you have to be so fanatic? Well, every line we have to read, every time you have to ask a question, every time. And then you feel this pressure of having to keep quiet and not even share one Devar Torah because you have to be like Speedy Gonzalez, have a Speedy Gonzalez said there for the sake of that hungry person. And what about those who decided that you have to eat the Afikoman at 12:01 a.m. otherwise the entire Seder is null and void, and they rush through the entire Haggadah, right? And then there's always that one person who talks about shtuyot on this holy night, and you can't even tell him anything because you don't want to embarrass him because he's your brother-in-law. And his wife is embarrassed for him, and her parents aren't happy with him either. And what about the fact that your kids are not in their own environment, so getting them to bed takes a lot longer and it's a lot more stressful. And somehow when they're around that rowdy cousin, they behave so wildly and you can't get them to fall asleep no matter what happens. So the kids are up till who knows what time of the night. And then what happens when your kids are fully awake and they're rowdy, but everybody else in the house is already asleep? And every few seconds you hear somebody in a very frustrating tone saying, shh, shh, we're trying to sleep. Yalla, go to sleep already. Yalla, no. Khan, you know this. Poor you. You wake up in the morning disoriented from the night before, tired. Your kids are still wild because of that one cousin. Your mother-in-law makes her usual comment for everybody to hear. She says, you know, Miriam, I couldn't sleep the entire night with all that ruckus in the house. I mean, I'm not complaining. אני לא מתלוננת. Baruch Hashem, it's good noise. But maybe tonight, זהו, all the kids are going to sleep at 6 o'clock. Tell me, באמת, what do you gain by going away for the Chag? And imagine if you'd stay home for Pesach in your own home, with your own children, with your Baal, and you teach the children about Yetziat Mitzrayim at your own table on the night of the Seder. What would that look like? Imagine if your husband would come to you this year and say, Miriam, this year I want to be home for Pesach. And don't worry, Miriam, I'm not going to put pressure on you. I'm going to call our parents to let them know. You don't have to worry about making those phone calls. And she says, no, they're going to get upset and they're going to start to complain and they're going to start to wonder if everything's okay. She says, you don't worry, I'm going to handle it. And then Shimon proceeds to call his mother. Ima, Shalom, ma shlomech? She says, Psader, ma kore? He says, Ima, I just wanted you to know that Miriam and I have been talking it over and we decided that this year we're going to be home for Pesach. His mother says, Yofi, good idea. Well, he didn't expect that, but at least there were no arguments. Then he called his mother-in-law. Shalom, Mommy? Oh, Shalom, Shimon. How are you? Oh, fine, Baruch Hashem. Listen, Mommy, I just want to know that this year, Miriam and I decided that we're making Pesach in our own home. And she says, Metzuyan, excellent. Shimon thought, he's in shock. He thought he's going to get arguments on both sides. But surprisingly, he didn't have any resistance from either side. As a yofi. Erev Pesach came along and Shimon sat down at the head of his own table with his wife and kids all around him. the little ones were already in pajamas. And Shimon and Miriam didn't have to feel embarrassed about the fact that the little ones were in pajamas. And if there were unpleasant moments, it didn't matter because Shimon and Miriam were in their own home with nobody watching or scrutinizing or criticizing. And as the little ones became tired, Miriam put them to bed without having to worry that anyone is going to complain that it took so long for her to put her kids to bed and come back to the table already. And then once the little ones were asleep, who was left at the table? The older ones. Shimon and his wife taught the older kids about the makot. They sang, they laughed, they danced, they ate at their own pace. They were able to dedicate quality time to their own kids. And then when the older ones went to bed, who was left? Shimon and Miriam. They recited Shir HaShirim together. They spoke a little bit more divrei Torah at the table together, one-on-one, be'achdut. They cleaned up together. They spoke about how nice the evening was. And then they each got into their pajamas, crawled into their comfortable 54-inch beds with the beautiful linen that Miriam bought especially for the Chag. They put their heads on the amazing feathered pillows, and they fell asleep. Eze yofi. The next day, they all woke up in a good mood, happy from the night before. I ask you, what's wrong with spending a Pesach like this in your own home? David HaMelech said, Ashrei Yoshvei Beitecha Od Yahalelucha Sela. We're going to stop here. Part 2 of meddling parents and outside interferences. And we're going to continue tomorrow with part 3 of meddling parents and outside interferences. We're going to continue this subject of the Chagim and visits and all of that. And again, I just want to remind you all out there about the donations that we're collecting for the renovations. If anyone wants to donate, and we really, really appreciate it. Help me build fortresses. Help me reach out to other women so that they too have the ability and the opportunity to grow in Yadut. Anybody who wants to make a donation, le'ilui nishmat somebody, for the refuah shalem of somebody, for the zivug of someone, it's a tremendous opportunity. You can do so by calling our offices at 347-430-5700 or by logging on to www.ohelsara.com, Sarah without an H, and you can make your donation there through PayPal. Thank you so much. I want to wish you all an amazing, amazing evening, and a day of inspiration and itchaskut. And may we all be zecher to the ultimate Shalom Bayit. Amen. Ken. Yehi Ratzon.